What happens when a country built on pacifism is asked to help secure one of the world's most volatile choke points? Nearly 20% of global oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and any disruption can ripple across energy markets within hours. This video examines Japan's strategic dilemma as pressure builds to join naval efforts protecting shipments, and what that decision could mean for regional stability and the global balance of power. At stake is more than a single deployment. If Japan steps beyond its traditional limits, it signals a structural shift in how it interprets its post-war constitution. If it refuses, alliance dynamics with the United States could be tested. And if the situation escalates into direct confrontation, the legal and operational thresholds governing military action could be pushed into uncharted territory. Each outcome alters not only Japan's trajectory, but also the broader framework of security cooperation in critical maritime corridors. Japan's position is rooted in history. After World War II, its constitution renounced war as a sovereign right and prohibited the use of force to resolve international disputes. For decades, this constrained Tokyo's military posture, limiting its forces to self-defense within narrowly defined boundaries. However, evolving threats and alliance commitments gradually expanded these limits. By 2015, new security legislation introduced the concept of collective self-defense, allowing Japan to act if an ally's security directly threatened its own survival. Energy dependence adds another layer. Japan imports roughly 90% of its crude oil from the Middle East, making uninterrupted flows through Hormuz essential to its economy. Even short-term disruptions can affect industrial output, electricity generation, and inflation. This reliance creates a direct strategic interest, but not necessarily a clear legal justification for military involvement under existing frameworks. The current tension emerges from a request by the United States for Allied naval support to secure shipping lanes. Washington's objective is straightforward: deter potential disruptions and ensure continuity of energy flows. For Japan, the calculation is more complex. Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi must weigh alliance expectations against constitutional limits and domestic opinion, which has historically been cautious about overseas military engagement. Japan does have precedents for maritime deployments. Anti-piracy missions in the Gulf of Aden provide a key example. In those operations, the Maritime Self-Defense Force conducted patrols and escorted commercial vessels under a law enforcement model. The legal justification rested on combating non-state actors, allowing Japan to operate without crossing into traditional combat roles. This framework is now being considered as a potential template. However, the present situation differs in critical ways. Escorting oil tankers in a region involving state actors introduces the possibility of direct military confrontation. Unlike piracy, which operates outside formal state structures, any clash in Hormuz could involve organized naval forces with advanced capabilities. This raises the legal threshold significantly, as Japan's laws permit the use of force only under strict conditions tied to national survival. Recent statements from defense leadership suggest that non-combat roles remain under consideration. These could include surveillance, intelligence sharing, and logistical support. Such measures align with Japan's established pattern of contributing without direct engagement. In 2019, for example, Japan deployed reconnaissance assets to the region following tanker incidents, but deliberately avoided high-risk zones, including Hormuz itself. Historical deployments reinforce this cautious approach. During the Gulf War in 1991, Japan contributed approximately $13 billion in financial support, but did not send combat forces. It later dispatched minesweepers after hostilities ended, marking its first overseas deployment. Following the 2001 attacks in the United States, Japan provided refueling and logistical support in Afghanistan. In Iraq, its troops were limited to reconstruction roles under strict rules of engagement and operated under Allied protection. Legal constraints remain central. Under the United Nations Charter, the use of force is generally restricted to self-defense or actions authorized by the Security Council. The current situation lacks clear consensus on these criteria, complicating Japan's decision-making. Any deployment that risks combat would require a legal argument that disruptions in oil supply constitute a direct threat to national survival, a position that has not yet been tested in practice. Consider the first scenario. If Japan agrees to a limited naval role under a policing framework, it could strengthen alliance coordination while staying within constitutional bounds. This would likely involve escort missions in lower-risk areas, expanded intelligence sharing, and coordination with multinational forces. Such a move would signal incremental evolution rather than a fundamental shift, preserving domestic support while addressing strategic concerns. Now consider a second scenario. If tensions escalate and Japanese vessels face direct confrontation, the government would be forced to interpret its laws under real-time pressure. Invoking collective self-defense would mark a significant precedent, potentially redefining the scope of military action for future crises. This could trigger domestic debate, legal challenges, and a reassessment of Japan's security posture. A third possibility lies in restraint. Japan could limit its response to diplomacy and economic measures, avoiding military involvement altogether. While this would align with its traditional stance, it risks creating friction with the United States, particularly if Washington views burden sharing as insufficient. Over time, this could influence alliance dynamics and expectations in other security contexts. The geopolitical implications extend beyond Japan. The Strait of Hormuz is not only an energy corridor, but also a strategic choke point where regional and global interests intersect. Increased militarization raises the risk of miscalculation, while coordinated security efforts could stabilize shipping lanes, but also entrench rivalries. Japan's decision will be closely watched by other states balancing similar tensions between domestic constraints and external pressures. What emerges is a test of how legal frameworks adapt under strategic stress. Japan's constitution was designed for a different era, yet it now faces scenarios shaped by interconnected economies and shifting power dynamics. The outcome will depend on how policymakers interpret risk, necessity, and legitimacy in a rapidly evolving environment.